What if all of life came to you with ease and joy and glory? What if that which you've always imagined possible actually is? What if it was possible to create a life you're excited to get out of bed for? Welcome to Creating Beyond podcast. I'm Ashlee Rose, here to introduce you to the tools you can use to create the life you've always dreamed of. Is it time for you to step into everything you came here to be? Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Creating Beyond podcast. You've heard Sam's side of the story. This is Sam. He is phenomenal. I've never met him in person before. You're an Access Bars facilitator and you live in Melbourne, Australia. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone listening.
So cool. You were so cute when you pinged me to have on my podcast, and when I messaged you and you sent back and you were like, oh my God, I just freaked out and I had to message my girlfriend. And I spoke to my friend and I was like, does that mean I'm famous if he's freaking out? It was this moment of, oh, why are you freaking out? So yeah, it was really cute. And I just
That's cool.
So I wanted to get you on today, and for all of the listeners, you put up a post a few days ago about vulnerability, and I really loved it. I really loved your willingness to actually have that conversation and speak to the power and the gift that vulnerability can be, because we're so often disempowered with this subject and in this topic, and we're so used to putting up walls and barriers to everything and everyone, particularly if you've been heartbroken, particularly in relationship, to never get hurt, to never get too close to someone. And I facilitate the relationship in different classes, and this topic is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And my ask is that we create so much more communion and intimacy between all of us in the world, and vulnerability is really one of the places to begin. So can you speak to what that is for you and where you actually started with this whole journey to more vulnerability?
Yeah, cool. So for me, vulnerability, obviously, it's what it is, to be exposed. So there is no walls and barriers or anything protecting you. When you be vulnerable, it's that open wound to everything and everyone. No matter what is said or what is done, it's just you be that vulnerability to become more of you, because you're shedding those things that you've once put up that are blocking you from being you. So then once you go through that vulnerability, it's layers are off to then be, you're exposing you to you in a sense,
Totally. I love that. And vulnerability is that open wound. And it's so funny how when you start thinking about it, that so many of us don't choose it, yet we're not even actually sure what's going to occur if and when we actually choose vulnerability. And really, I love what you said, because really the more vulnerable you're willing to be, the more access you have to you. And it's crazy, but it's this thing that scares the shit out of people the most, because we don't even know what that looks like or what that is or what that means. And so with this whole conversation, I love in your post, actually, I'll read it. The first part of your post, you said, I used to not let myself be vulnerable, especially from the conditioning of being a male. Acting tough was the way to go. Don't cry, harden up, only girls cry, don't be a pussy. All the things that shut men off from ever truly being in tune with themselves and their vulnerability, and all the suppression of self that comes with that. So can you speak more to that, what it was like and what it is actually being a male with this conditioning of don't show yourself, don't allow yourself to be vulnerable?
Yeah, sure. So growing up in Melbourne, there is a lot of conditioning on men, which I'm sure it's throughout the whole world. But it's a lot of, guys suppress everything. You've got to look tough. You've got, you don't show that side of yourself because then you're weak. And then, you're exposed because you're being weak, and it's you don't want to be seen that way, because especially coming out of high school, like the school grounds a big culprit for that sort of behavior, where it's, you've got your different social groups, blah blah blah. There's always that one group, so sort of cool kids, and then the other groups that stem off from that sort of thing. And so obviously a lot of bullying and stuff takes place in the school grounds, and even a lot of like social groups between guys, it's like that pressure they put on each other, even though they're friends, of like, don't be a pussy, like do it, harden up, just this sort of male toxicity of, you can't be something else, and have a hard shell, so that then you, I guess, are protected from whatever this thing is that people are fearing to be exposed to, which really is themselves. So growing up, like, I wouldn't cry, I wouldn't express my emotions, I'd suppress them all, then it would turn into anger, and then I'd just be angry at the world. And that didn't really play out in any way in favor for me at all, because I just would have all this built up rage, and then I wouldn't talk to anyone, I wouldn't express it, and then sort of goes into like just not caring for myself, then not caring for anybody else, and then just like doing all that, going out drinking and that party life that then just suppresses everything more. And yeah, to the point really where you just sort of lose you, and you become reliant on that image you have portrayed yourself as or created, and you've got to then protect and defend and blah blah blah, which is this fake persona you make that doesn't exist, but you're trying to make it real, and it totally just never works out for you. You just get this further distance away from you, to the point where you're pretty much losing you in a way, because you're so disconnected from all the walls and barriers you put up to keep yourself out.
Totally. And that's the thing, like with image, it's like we're taught that like image is more vital and valuable than being. And unless you're willing to actually have vulnerability, you can't access like your being, which is you being willing to be everything that you are, whether that is to cry, whether that is to like be happy, like whatever that is in that moment. And that's the thing. It's like we are taught to maintain this image, particularly men, and particularly men in Australia. And I can't really talk to like, I'm sure it's similar to men in other cultures, but it's also different. Like I know, in Europe, the men, like it is different. You are actually like allowed, quote unquote, to express yourself more and be more vulnerable. So this whole thing about image, it's like, I noticed that we create this image when being us becomes too uncomfortable. And so often we won't spend any time within this space of being, because the more you be you, the more you receive you. And that can be excruciatingly uncomfortable for people, because they don't know what to do with that. What do you do when you're not judging yourself? What do you do when you're not making yourself wrong? Like, what is actually liking you? So I love what you said about that, because that's the thing. It's like we are taught growing up to create this image of us, this persona, this is who I am, that does nothing to allow you to access like the being that you actually be, and to actually have you.
And you're not taught that either. And then I find a lot of what happens from high school is people keep that high school mentality, and they carry that out through lives unconsciously. They're playing out still their high school mentalities and like being cool, or I find people use judgment as a defense mechanism of like if I'm judging you, then I'm protected from you because I'm the one judging you. You've got something that I can judge, so that way I'm sort of on top of you as of what, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and all that
which
does keep
it
you
doesn't.
from
Yeah,
you. Like it
yeah,
doesn't actually work, because the thing is, like, that's the thing. Judgment is a direct reflection of what's actually going on with you. So that's the thing. It's like, so often when we judge another, we're doing that in order to like separate and reject us from us. So can you, with that, can you speak about like where this journey started for you? Because I know, like you were mentioning on your post, that when you met your girlfriend, Paige, that like all of this began to change. So like how, what did you choose that's actually different, and where did it begin?
So yeah, like in the post I mentioned my first, like not my first girlfriend, but a girlfriend I had when I was younger, I think 19 to 20 or something, like 21, around there. It was a bad, like a, you know, quote bad breakup. It was not. It was just not good for either party, and it was, you know, we lived together, and I just who I was then, not being functioning from unconsciousness, blah blah blah. It ended badly. So then I hurt her a lot in the process of that, emotionally, stringing her along, blah blah blah. So to me, I was like, I started to create a lot of guilt and wrongness about it all, and took that internally. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to do that to another person, so I'm going to put up walls and barriers to not do that to somebody, because I've just hurt this person so much. And then years went by of having those walls and barriers up that, you know, just got stronger and stronger. So then when I had my next girlfriend, I was just not emotionally available at all. I just had I just didn't open up, and it just didn't create anything greater for the relationship, because there was no communion, obviously no vulnerability, um, and just like a melting of spaces. It wasn't there because I had the walls and barriers up, so couldn't be. So then after that relationship, I was like, well, I don't want to do that again, because that just didn't work at all, and it wasn't fair to that person, because I wasn't letting myself be seen in the relationship. So I was like, well, I'm going to choose something different. And I haven't been choosing vulnerability, so maybe I'll start choosing vulnerability. And then I went, well, I gave like not much in that previous one. So the next relationship I have, I just want to go all in, and I don't care what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. Like whatever happens. I want to continually open up more of me, and if I get my heart broken, I get my heart broken. Whatever. Like, it's, to me, that was like, let's choose that. So then, yeah, fast forward to meeting Paige, then just being a continual like letting go and opening more of myself up, and like it's a muscle you build, the vulnerability. So it's just when sometimes there's moments where like it's so raw, and it's just, there's been times where it's a conversation and it's like, do you still want to be with me? But even just having that vulnerability to say that, because there's this parts of you that if they say no, you don't want that to be an answer. So, so many times that we don't choose to be vulnerable because in our minds we want it to be something, and we don't want to risk it not being that thing. So we then don't choose to be vulnerable in situations that could open up that space to becoming something way beyond and way greater than we could possibly imagine. So I've had to really dive into those moments and just be raw and be vulnerable, no matter what was said, to get beyond those walls and to get beyond whatever was there and whatever I was stopping myself with, and crack open more of life. Yes, crack open more of me, and crack open more of the relationship, and all of it.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, like vulnerability is one of the elements of intimacy. So without it, you cannot access like more intimacy, more closeness, more communion. And so often I see people going like, you know, I desire more closeness and more connection. But the thing is, if you're not willing to be vulnerable, you cannot actually access that. And it really is like, it's definitely a muscle. I know for me, like growing up, and then particularly mine hasn't so much been in relationship, but mine's more so been in friendship, of the, so often we don't even realize that we're not actually choosing vulnerability. Like so often we just assume that that's just the way to be. But I really have noticed, like over the course of, you know, the last few years of choosing more consciousness and choosing to like recognize where I'm functioning from, each moment I take to be vulnerable with someone and actually say what's coming up for me, it just melts everything. And it melts everything. And then you have more of this beautiful melty space and way more access to, and so much joy. And then people think that it's about becoming closer to someone else, but you ultimately become closer to you. And really, this is the thing that we, I think, fear, quote unquote, more dynamically than anything else is us. And I think there's like a quote, I don't remember who it's by, but it's something like our deepest fear is that we're not in, our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond belief or something like that. And really, it's kind of that power that we're avoiding, rejecting without, you know, the choice for vulnerability. And I'm so grateful that you're willing to have this conversation. I'm so grateful for you being willing to choose something different, even though it's excruciating, even though you're like, I don't even know where this is going to lead me. I don't even know if this relationship is still going to, you know, be here at the end of the day. But what a beautiful journey to you having more of you, because you can't not have that now.
It's it definitely, like, to people that don't do vulnerability listening, it gets easier because you just get more willing to do it, even though there definitely is still times where you're like, fuck, I don't want to say this. But that's just because you're holding on to something that you don't want to lose. You, in your head, you don't want to lose.
Yeah.
So then, and like two, we create so much in our heads about things that don't actually exist, and then we create these stories and we attach all these thoughts and emotions and blah 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 and make it this huge thing that then scares a lot of people off from being vulnerable, because now it's this massive thing. Whereas people, you find when once you just say it, you're like, oh wait, that wasn't that huge thing, I just made it. And it just, like you said, just melts away and just dissipates. But it's like, if you didn't need to hold on to all those things and you could just say it, how much more space and ease could that create in your body, in your being, in your life, in your relationships and everything?
Yeah, exactly. Because relationship is like literally like what you are, like relationship is everything you are in relation to, which is literally like your car,
Everything.
your bank account, your body, your business. Like, and I say this so much, but I'm like, really, like, relationship is not about you and another. It's like, it's about you and you. And from that space, it's like you can create something so much greater with like literally everything around you. And you can invite the world to something so much greater. And that's kind of where I've really wanted to invite everyone to. And I kind of get you're very similar with this. It's like, what if every relationship that you were choosing could actually invite the entirety of the world to something so much greater? And I recently kind of made a choice to go, okay, well, if I'm in any relationships, like friendships, like any relationship with anyone that's not inviting the world to something so much greater, it's not actually working for me anymore, because I'm not here to maintain status quo in relationship. I'm not here to have the best of this reality. I'm here to create something so far beyond this reality where communion actually exists, where vulnerability is actually the preferred choice over judgment, over barriers, over walls.
What was I going to say? No, it's gone. It's gone.
They're creating something greater for the world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was gonna say, like, with people that want to start being vulnerable, if they're not choosing it, but they know like, okay, this is something that is required, or I want to try out, or blah blah blah. It is also looking at who you surround yourself with. Like you're saying, you're choosing to surround yourself with people that do want to create communion in the world, do want to create a greater reality for the world, blah, blah, blah. You know, if you're surrounding yourself with people that, if you do show any sort of vulnerability, will shut you down and judge you and, you know, make you seem less and whatever, then it's like, are those people really the people that are going to contribute greater to you and that you should have around? And it's like, maybe it is time to start changing your circle so that then you have got those people that will hold a space for you, that you can be vulnerable, and that it will empower you to something greater and to you being more of you, and that vulnerability is welcomed. It's like, be vulnerable, like let it all out, like, you know, be as vulnerable as you want to be. Like, I got the space for you. Let's go. Let's get greater. Let's become more of us.
Yeah.
So it's
Oh my
like,
God. I love that.
creating that, cultivating that space of vulnerability with you obviously first, because it starts with you, and then the people you're with, because then you'll just watch your life amplify
Yeah.
trillionfold. You know what I mean?
Totally. You become you, and you are like the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that was like excruciating when I first like remember hearing that and kind of looking at that again recently. And not that anyone that I've surrounded myself by is not amazing in any way, but it's just, particularly with like the level of like intimacy I desire to choose, and the level of receiving, and the level of being, and the level of communion, not many people actually desire that. There's not many people that are able to choose that right now, and or are looking to choose that. And so I really had to start looking at, okay, like these people that are surrounding me, like, truth, can they actually receive me? And truth, do they invite me to the level of receiving that I could be choosing and having with me? And that started kind of gifting me like all this awareness of like, okay, the people in my life that were actually inviting me to something more, and the people in my life that weren't necessarily inviting me to not something less, but just nothing different. And so it really is, it's like, if you guys are looking at like having more of you, receiving more of you, being more of you, start looking at, can the people around you that you're surrounding yourself with receive you? And that is going to dynamically, as you said, begin to change everything. Because in that moment, if you surround yourself by people that can receive you and don't judge, then you just get to show up as you and be you. And in that space, every moment you are invited to more of you through the receiving they have of themselves first and foremost, and then of you. Because that's the thing, it's like, if people cannot receive you, remember, nothing really has anything to do with you. It's where they literally do not have the capacity to receive themselves, because they're not choosing vulnerability. They haven't been empowered to know how to even choose that, where to begin.
And it's also looking at like what you desire in life, and if it is something greater, and it is that vulnerability becomes this thing, this muscle that is growing and growing and getting stronger and stronger, because it is a superpower that you have, people that will actually hold space for you and empower you as well, not just validate what it is, because it's different. Like if they're just going to validate it, then it's only validating, if they're just going to validate the trauma or the past stuff and make that more real and true for you, then it's really not going to go anywhere. It's just going to make it more real and true for you. It's like having a space where whatever you choose to be or whatever needs to come out comes up, and then it's like, cool, well, what else is possible now?
Totally.
Like, let's out-create that.
Yeah.
And go beyond, and not keep it just looping and cycling.
Yeah, I was mentioning that actually to a friend yesterday. I said to him, like, he wanted to send me something, and he said, can you please check this out and like give me your like honest opinion and point of view, like let me know if anything can change and become greater. And I said, I will. I said, I promise I always have your back in that way. I was like, friends in this reality are meant to like align and agree and like make you feel better. So it's like, oh, it's great, you did such a good job, like I love it, rather than people that truly have your back are actually going to say what is, and actually empower you to something so much greater. So if it's not as great as they could be choosing, it's like, well, you know, I get this, this, and this. And is there something else you're aware of that could actually create greater with this, you know, whatever it is? So that is that space of true empowerment. It's like not having people around you that are going to align and agree with where you're at, but constantly inviting you to receive more of you, to have more of you, to go beyond, you know, the barriers that have been up your entire life that you may not even be aware of. So I mean, this is such a big conversation. There's like just this topic alone we could talk about forever, because it really is connected to so many different facets of your life, and so many different facets of your life that aren't working. Like, really, if something's not working, it's like, okay, do I have walls and barriers up to this? And if yes, what can I choose? And where can I begin to like lower them and force them down if you have to start accessing that receiving of you?
Yeah, it's that like you know, where that vulnerability, it starts with you. You got to look at your life and go, be vulnerable enough to go, this isn't working. Like, and acknowledging that, go, this actually isn't working. I'm not happy with this.
Yeah.
You know, I thought I was. I created all this stuff about it, and I had this ideal picture in my head or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it's not working. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that and letting it, like, that thing, and then go, okay, now, well, what else?
Yeah. And I think people believe that oftentimes things won't get greater or they can't get greater. And like, you get so focused on the what if it doesn't ever get greater, rather than greatness only begins with like the choice for vulnerability. So it's like you have to choose vulnerability first in order to then allow yourself to begin to access that greatness and the awareness of what you'd even like your life to look like. And like recently, I mean, a lot of people are aware now, but recently I've just left my partner and we've been on and off for like 13 years. And it was exactly that. It was, I had to get to the space of being vulnerable with me and going, is this now working? Because I'm constantly changing and shifting and evolving, it's like, okay, is this now working? And more so, is this working for him? And that is, the vulnerability is like including everyone in that. It's not just you, what do I want? It's like including everyone in that and being vulnerable and going, well, is this working for them also? And it doesn't mean vulnerability is going to lead to a breakup or lead to you going, oh, this isn't working. Vulnerability can also lead, for me, multiple times throughout my relationship as well, to so much greater and so much more of me. So
Well, yeah,
excruciating. And what else is possible beyond that?
well, yeah, I like to see it as like there's gold waiting for you on the other side of the vulnerability, no matter what it is, like no matter what the outcome is. Because if it's a breakup, you know, most of the time we think that something bad is going to happen or something wrong is going to happen from being vulnerable. That's all we're afraid of. Like, it's going to be a breakup, we're going to lose this, blah, blah, blah. Like you're saying, we don't tend to look at the, you know, the positive side of it. It's like, what if all of it was gold, no matter what? It's like, and that, having that is like, and knowing that whatever is on the other side of this is going to be greater. If it is a breakup, that is going to be greater for me. It's going to be greater for this person, blah, blah, blah. So it's that knowing of there's gold on the other side of this to then choose vulnerability.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. And like, I've never heard of that before. And I love it. Like, that's awesome, because it's like, for any of you listening, like I'm sure all of you listening have gone through a breakup. It's like, and you think it's like the worst thing ever. And like, are any of you like actually still believe it's the worst thing that ever happened, or something so much greater is now possible, available, or has become possible and available? And I love that, because I guess for me, the gold is every time you choose vulnerability, you gain access to more of you. For me, is the gold. What if the gold wasn't about someone else? What if it was about you accessing more of you? And if you desire that, oh my God, vulnerability is a way to get there, and quick. And it can be excruciating, and you can feel like you're going to die. And, you know, you're like, I'm going to explode if I say this. I mean, I get it, you know, and I'm sure you've had plenty of those moments as well. And you guys listening, plenty of those moments. But it's like, how much joy and how much fun can you have with that? Like the feeling of like your entire life about to explode.
Yeah.
It's the awareness of your entire life about to explode into something so much greater than you've ever been willing to access before. And this is just a choice. You do not have to choose vulnerability. It's not wrong if you don't choose vulnerability. If you desire more of you or more connection or more communion in a relationship, you have to. You cannot not choose vulnerability if that's what you actually desire. And yeah, what choice can you guys make today to have and choose and be more vulnerable right away? And really, like, what if every morning you guys woke up and just asked that question and began to like literally, energetically, visually lower those walls and barriers you have erected around you and see what shows up and see how much more receiving you gain access to and how much more of everything you have access to. So thank you so much for being here. Oh my God.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being you. I'm grateful for all your podcasts that you put out and I listen to.
Oh, so cool. And now you're going to listen to you this time.
How's it getting better?
Can you please let people know, I know you've got a free call and a paid call coming up about vulnerability. Can you let people know about that, where they find you?
Yeah, sure. So next Monday, the 17th of October, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, so Melbourne time, I've got a free call, Vulnerability with You, on Zoom. So you can access that on my Instagram. So my Instagram handle is @EarthSamLove, just one word, EarthSamLove. And then the following Tuesday on the 25th at 7 p.m, I've got a call, paid one, the You in Vulnerability. So really just diving into vulnerability and looking at it all and looking at, the way people use it, walls and barriers to block themselves out and like separate themselves and insecurities and like how much of a strength being vulnerable actually is and what possibilities it can create in your world and like tools that you can use every day to actually tap into that vulnerability and that gaining more access to you and building that muscle, so that you can, start creating a greater life for yourself and a life that you want to get out of bed for and a life where you actually show up as you all the time.
Oh my God, that sounds delightful. Well, I'll put all the links to your Instagram and those calls in the show notes below. Guys, if you're looking for more vulnerability, please get on those. I wonder how much more access you could have to you. And as you guys know, I facilitate the Relationship Done Different classes, and we dive deep into vulnerability in that as well, and the elements of intimacy. And I'm actually going to the Netherlands, oh my God, in 4 weeks' time to facilitate one of those as a sex and relationship retreat.
Cool.
So I'm so excited. Oh my God. This is the third time I've gone to Europe in 6 months. And I'm like, are people allowed to do that? And then I was like, wait a second, we get to create our own reality. So like, why do we not do that?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm excited to meet you in person whenever that is. And all those links will be in the show notes, guys. Thank you again for being here. And what else is possible beyond vulnerability?
Yay. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ash.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen into this episode and my show. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if it has been a contribution to you, please leave a 5-star review, subscribe to my show, and share this episode with anyone you know that may be looking to create their life as something greater. You can find more about me at Ashlee, ASHLEE-rose.com, and you can find more information about the tools of Access Consciousness at accessconsciousness.com.